All right, so we are in Mark 2. We're starting in verse 13. And Jesus is again back in Capernaum. Remember, he was there, he left, and it appears he went to Nazareth, got basically kicked out of Nazareth, and now he's back in Capernaum. And they're remembering, hey, this is the guy that was teaching and he was healing. So he just healed the guy that was in Peter's house. Remember the house, the roof was ripped off, or part of the roof was ripped, and let the paralytic guy down. And so that's what has just happened. So we pick up the scene now in verse 13 and 14. And Jamal, would you start by reading for us 13 and 14, please, sir?
Sir, Mark chapter 2, right?
Chapter 2, verses 13 and 14. I'll share the screen so you will know exactly where we are.
Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him, and Levi got up and followed him.
All right, great. Now I'm going to try something here, and if it fails, you guys just give me one of these if I can see it or say something, because it's not going to work. I'm going to share a video with you from The Chosen, and it's from the scene where Jesus is calling Matthew out, and it's just a great little scene. It's 3 minutes. I think it's worth it. I think that the theatric depiction of it is spot on. It's really good. So bear with me for a moment here. We'll get her going. All right, can you see a black screen in front of you?
Yes, sir.
All right, good deal. I'm going to start playing. If it's not working for you, start screaming and hollering, and I will stop it. But here we go. What you're going to see is Matthew's in the tax booth. He's got his Roman guard in front of him, and then Jesus walks by, and that's what's going on. And the guy who kind of challenges Jesus a little bit in the situation is Peter. So if you don't know the characters of The Chosen, that's where we are. Here we go.
We live in the same world, Matthew.
Next.
Besides, what else are you going to do with a mind like yours?
Matthew. Matthew, son of Alphaeus. Follow me.
Me?
Yes, you.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing? You want me to join you?
Keep moving, street preacher.
Do you have any idea what this guy's done? Do you even know him?
Yes.
Listen, I said to... What are you doing? Where do you think you're going?
Guys, let me go.
Have you lost your mind? You have money. Quintus protects you. No Jew lives as good as you. You're gonna throw it all away.
Yes.
I don't get it.
You didn't get it when I chose you either.
But this is different. I'm not a tax collector.
get used to different. I'm glad we passed by your booth today, Matthew.
Yes.
Shall we? We have a celebration to prepare for.
You will regret this, Matthew.
What's the tablet for?
I grabbed it without thinking. You can put it back.
No, keep it. You may yet find use for it.
Where are we going?
A dinner party.
I'm not welcome at dinner parties.
Well, that's not going to be a problem tonight. You're the host.
Love that scene.
Absolutely.
So good. So good. So, all right. I think it's so neat that, yeah, if you didn't catch it, that they kind of depict Matthew as having a little bit of autism. He's kind of on the spectrum, but he's very detailed and he catches stuff. And that's why the whole thing about the tablet, you know, they're making inference that, well, he writes stuff down. So, but really neat. Peter about freaks out that Jesus is going to make him part of their posse. He's a tax collector. That's synonymous with sinner. I mean, sinner and tax collector. You see that all the time in the New Testament, in the Gospels. You say sinner, or they say tax collector right along with it. So
Can I
vile, sure.
can I amplify on that? I was kind of curious why they separate the two.
Okay.
Okay. And I watched the little commentary by R.C. Sproul, and he was talking about it. And he says that the reason that they define them separately is because a sinner is somebody that still claims the faith, but is not an avid follower of the law.
Mm.
A tax collector, okay, tax collectors in those days had to bid on that job.
Mhm.
Okay, and it went to the highest bid, and it was strictly because they had to collect so much, kind of like a contractor, and everything above what they bid on, they were able to keep for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, but in order to do this, they had to denounce their religion. And that's why they're considered so much worse, okay, and separately than a sinner, okay, because they have walked away from their faith. R.C. Sproul refers to them as being a quisling. And a quisling is defined as a traitor who collaborates with the enemy. So I thought that was rather interesting.
That is interesting. Yep.
Well, and Rich, I think you've explained it before as saying that if you were a tax collector for the Romans in Judea, that you were quite literally a traitor because you're collecting taxes from an oppressed people,
Yeah.
from Jews for the Romans. So, I mean, you were viewed as a traitor. I mean,
Yeah. You
taking
were,
money from your own people, you know.
yeah, you were definitely a traitor. It's like the Taliban taking over in America and somebody taking up taxes for the Taliban.
Right.
You know, that's the way it was viewed. So, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. And so they were hated, but obviously the Lord was working with Matthew, working on Matthew, Levi at that point. All right. 15, 16. Ned, would you read that, please, sir?
As he reclined at the table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And the scribes and Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?"
All right. Well, the Pharisees made it their business to disassociate with anyone who didn't follow the law or the Mishnah. Now, who remembers what the Mishnah was? I guess it is. Something about 613 laws. The Mishnah was 613 some laws that were like guardrails that kept people from breaking the real law. So if I can't do something on the Sabbath, then we're going to make, I think, I can't remember how many it was. It's like 39 additional laws, what they could not do on the Sabbath to keep them from breaking the real law on the Sabbath, from falling off the cliff of the law on the Sabbath. And so the Mishnah was 613 additional laws to the law. And so the Pharisees, anybody who didn't play that game, the Pharisees wouldn't dare associate with those people, the sinners or the tax collectors. And that's exactly what Jesus was doing. So, which was awful to associate or talk with them, right? All right, verse 17, Doug.
And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners."
All right. And your friend R.C. Sproul brought out the what good is a doctor who only associates with well people?
Right. Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Nope.
So Mike Winger brought out, if you think that you're righteous, Jesus isn't here for you, but to those who perceive they are unrighteous. So in other words, all are unrighteous, but most people just don't realize it. A lot of people just don't get it. I'm going to read Luke 18, 9 to 14, which is kind of a similar circumstance that kind of brings the nuance out a little bit more. He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. Two men went up into the temple to pray, one Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed thus: "God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get." But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. So it's when Jesus was speaking, to the Pharisees and kind of explaining the situation, they obviously were not convinced that they were sinners. So therefore, he wasn't there for them. And until they realized they're sinners and realized they needed him, they had no need of him. All they wanted to do was kill him at this point. Soon they're about to want to kill him anyway. Comments, questions? (18 to 20). Dad, would you do that?
18 to 20.
Yes, sir.
I like that, sir. And the disciples of John and of the Pharisees used to fast. And they come and say unto him, "Why do the disciples of John and of the Pharisees fast, but the disciples fast not?" And Jesus said unto them, "Can the children of the bride chamber fast while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast."
Go ahead and do 20.
20.
Mhm.
But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then they shall fast in those days.
So here's what's going on. The Pharisees made a habit of fasting twice a week, but no one would fast during a wedding celebration because the wedding celebration would last for like a week. Now, I could not find reference to this directly. And if you have that, I mean, I heard it in a couple of commentaries that it was law that they could not fast during a wedding celebration because it was a week long. It's supposed to be a celebration. I couldn't find it, but if you have reference to it in a study Bible or something like that, let me know. That would be awesome. Let's see.
At the wedding feast, they wouldn't want to be fasting. They want to get all the grub they can get.
Yeah. Yeah. And that seems, the logic is there, but I was looking for the reference to the Mosaic law that said, Leviticus, whatever, that you couldn't fast during a wedding feast. I mean, it makes sense. It totally makes sense. It may be in there. I just couldn't find it. But Jesus references it, so it's there. The twice a week fasting thing was a tradition adopted by legalistic Pharisees at the time. Mosaic law in Leviticus 16, 29, and 31 only prescribes one fast on the Day of Atonement. So, this Pharisaical twice a week thing was that was them. So the boys were not breaking a fast that they needed to keep. They were only breaking what the Mishnah had said, or maybe just what tradition had brought into it. The other thing about this is in the Old Testament, the bridegroom is God. And if in the Old Testament, typism wise, if the bridegroom is God, who in the Old Testament is the bride?
The church.
Think about the Old Testament now. Pretty much the church's mother, which would be Israel.
I was going to say the people of Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's strictly Old Testament. Now in the New Testament, Doug, who's the bridegroom and the bride in the New Testament?
Jesus would be the bride, and the groom would be the church, or the other way around.
The other way around. Yep.
The other way around. Right.
Yep. The other way around. What you see here then is that Jesus claims to be God, and as long as the bridegroom is here, it's time for celebration, not fasting. There will be time for that later on. But then again, anytime we see Jesus claiming to be God, that's another calling card, isn't it? And that's another item against him when it comes to wanting to put him to death. So he's playing typisms all over the place. He's about to play a big one here in just a minute. 21 and 22. Somebody say something? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. 21, 22. Jamal, could you read that?
No one sews a patch of unstrung cloth on an old garment. Otherwise, the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into the wineskins.
All right. Let's hear somebody explain that. This is a tough one. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna make my best attempt at it here.
All right, I'm sitting in my seat. I'm ready.
Okay, especially now, you got to look back at the time before nylons and all these other fancy threads and all. Everything was pretty much made out of cotton and wool.
Mhm.
Okay, so if a piece of clothing was washed several times, it would shrink up to a certain point, and then it would stop the shrink. But if you took and had a hole in one of those pieces of clothing, okay, and you put a new piece of cloth over that hole and stitch it in place, and then washed it, well, that new patch that matched that hole would shrink when the rest of the garment wouldn't. And what would happen is it would tear and it would make the hole even larger yet. And that's the explanation I got on the clothing.
But what does it mean?
I got what it, I mean, practically speaking, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've ever heard this explained. And Rich, I know you got the answer, man. I'm ready to hear it.
I want to give opportunity. And this has always been a baffler for me. It's a pretty deep one. Going back to R.C. Sproul, and there were numbers that fell into this line, Mike Winger as well. He's talking about the difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. Old Covenant being the old, yeah, Doug's like, oh yeah, I got it.
I remember that commentary.
There you go. You want to give it a shot? You want to try it?
When you have a hole, okay, and the hole is the Old Covenant,
okay,
and it is at one certain particular size, and you try and go throw something new into that covenant,
mm-hmm,
there's going to be people that are not going to agree with it, they're going to see it as being destructive in their eyes. So it's going to be tearing. So you take the new covenant and try and combine the new covenant with the old covenant. And what's going to happen is it's going to tear a big hole in the middle of the old covenant, because people are not going to be at a point where they want to accept that change.
mm-hmm. All right. And I think that's a pretty good explanation. And we see it later on in Corinthians. Where else have we been? We see it in where Paul is going back to the old churches, and you've got Judaizers who are in the church, and they're trying to add, for instance, circumcision to salvation, and so that's Old Testament stuff, trying to make the New Testament fit into. It's not going to work. And so we see that in the Pauline letters all over the place. But you understand why people were trying to do that, because that's what they were taught. This is the way we do it. That was normal. And in the clip, Jesus says, get used to different. Well, yeah, the way to salvation is not up to works anymore. It's up to grace, because the sin is about to be paid for. And so that's what this is all about. And that's, it's right after the story on the fasting. And he talks about the cloth, he talks about the wine, all things that change. There's they were fasting twice a week and so forth, not necessary anymore. I'm not saying fasting was bad, but it's not necessary anymore. So, I've never understood it that way until I got to studying it. So I was kind of glad that this week kind of came up, and I saw that scripture coming. So that was good.
I like the way that he described it with the wineskins also.
And the wineskins, yep. So
to me, it kind of lends itself almost to the patch, like the patch of cloth, kind of reminds you almost of like a Band-Aid. It's like, we're not here to provide a temporary fix
yeah,
or we're not trying to fill in the holes of the law.
Yeah.
It's a completely new covenant. And that's
Yeah.
like that, I don't know, kind of think of a Band-Aid, you know, that
Yeah.
we're not here to patch it. We're not here to fix it. We're here to replace it.
Yep,
Does that make sense?
it does. It does.
Okay. I'll throw something in.
Throw it in.
Okay. When, as far as sewing a new piece into an old cloth, when one turns his life over to Jesus, he's a new person. He's not half old and half new. He is a new person.
He's a new creation. That's right. That's right. It's a good point. That's a good point.
Right.
Now, let me ask this. Let me set you up a little bit. Then what was the use of the law?
To show us no matter what we do, we couldn't live for God. Oh, there's one thing I know with the Old Testament. God, I feel like with the law, we tried to prove to God that we could live for him when we couldn't.
Okay, because it was works based, right?
Yes.
That's right.
We couldn't do it. I felt like the Old Testament people try to show God we can do this, and God gave them the 10 Commandments. Like, okay, and we saw what happened.
Yeah.
We still see what happened.
Yeah.
And I can't remember where. Book, I think it's Romans, is Paul saying it's therefore the laws of the old covenant, are they no longer useful? No, they are still here.
Mm-hmm.
They were there for a reason. They're still here for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, if it wasn't for the Old Testament, we wouldn't know we were sinners, would we? All right. 23, Ned, I'm going to call to you. 23 and 24.
Sure. And one Sabbath he was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?"
All right.
Plucking heads of grain, is that work? That would be.
According to the Mishnah, it was, but according to Deuteronomy 23:25, it was fine to go walking in a field and shell, harvest, eat a handful of grain, handfuls, as long as you didn't take a sickle or a basket or something like that to take a load kind of thing.
Right.
Walk through there and eat all you want. And in the old times, the farmers were told to leave the ends of their field and the corners for people to come by, anybody who was in need to come by and get what they needed. But on the Sabbath, people were limited to just using their hands. But according to the Mishnah, those 39 additional laws about the Sabbath, they weren't allowed to do it. But, the Pharisees were just looking for something. They were just looking for anything to dig and poke Jesus about. And so that was what that was all about. 25 and 26, Doug. Here's where it's going to get thick. You're going to have to hang on to me for a minute here. All right.
Okay, 25 and 26.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and was hungry, he and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar and the high priest, and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him."
All right. This becomes a real smackdown. And because if you I mean, the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees, I mean, these guys, that's what they did all day long, was read the law and read the Mishnah and know the Mishnah. So when he said, have you never read? It was like, what? Are you kidding me? That's all they do, is try to read the law and be good, because that was their works salvation. Now, here's something I would have never caught. There's no way. 1 Samuel 21 is what Jesus is talking about, that situation where David goes in and he's asking for the bread from the temple, from the showbread. Bread of perfect presence, as it says. And but the story is, and if you go back to read, it's actually the priest's name is different, which is Ahimelech. But if you go back to the scripture, it says how he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar, the high priest. Abiathar was Ahimelech's son. Abiathar became David's high priest slightly later on, because as the story goes, Saul heard what the priest had done, whoever the priest was that talked with David, and gave him the bread for him and his boys, him and his posse, kept them alive. Saul heard about it, went to that priest, killed all the priests in that location because he did that. But guess who escaped? Abiathar. Abiathar became the priest of David. So now you've got the followers of Saul who were on the wrong side, and you've got Abiathar who chose David, God's anointed one, and saved the day. So Jesus is directly referencing David's high priest, Abiathar, who chose the right anointed one, and is saying that you're questioning and you're coming against God's anointed one. Which side are you going to be on? So I hope I said that right, but there's a whole typism here where he's pointing it back at them and saying, which side are you going to be on? That's the typism right here. Really, really interesting, way deeper than I ever thought that was. So kind of neat. Even though he uses a different name, it's very much on purpose, because he uses David's high priest who was there. May not have been high priest then, but he might have been the guy that he talked to. Might have. So interesting, huh?
Super interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope I said all that right too, because that took me a minute to soak that in. All right. We're getting some cool music going on here. All right. 27. Whose turn is it now? Who's it? Dad? Is it your turn? 27 and 28?
Seemed like it came around awful quick.
Did I skip anybody? I didn't mean to. You guys keep missing, keep changing places on my lineup. I keep losing. Who's who? 27, 28. Dad, if you'd finish this up, that'd be great.
This is a short one. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath.
All right. What he's quoting there, the moment or the situation in history he's quoting is Exodus 16:29, where the Sabbath was a gift to the former slaves. They were Egyptians. They were slaves. Slaves didn't get a day off. And so when they were gifted this moment, these 24 hours of don't work, and they had been working for 24 hours for 400 years, that was a gift. That was an enormous gift. And so the gift was to man so that he wouldn't work so much. Also, it's a typology. Jesus brings us into God's rest. And so remember, I think it's Hebrews. It mentions that no, I shouldn't say that. I can't remember which one it was. But it says that Jesus is our Sabbath. But anyway, Jesus brings us into God's rest by removing the requirement of works from salvation. You know, it's all related to work. And so it's got this little twist on it here that that the works part has been removed from the requirement to be saved, which I think is really neat. And yet, it's the most common understanding of salvation in America and the rest of the world. If you ask somebody, are you going to heaven? Yeah, I'm a good guy. I've never killed anybody. I'm better than Hitler. You know, just on and on and on. What's their justification for going to heaven? Rarely do you see somebody that says, well, I don't deserve it, but my Savior does. And he's bringing me with him. He paid for my sins, you know. And but it sadly, as much as it's been taught, works is still king when people think about salvation, unfortunately.
Can I read what they put in my study Bible as far as talking about the Sabbath being given to man as a gift?
Yeah, please.
I like the way they've got it worded. It says, it emphasizes that man is not to be confined by the Sabbath. Rather, the Sabbath is given as a gift to man for spiritual and physical refreshment.
There we go. Yep. Good. Now, I didn't mean to go into this right now, but when is the Sabbath?
Saturday.
Tradition.
Which I've always.
Traditional Sabbath is Saturday, yes.
Right.
Yep.
The sundown.
Even though most of us followed on Sunday.
Yep. Sundown Friday. You're right, Ned. Yep. We were in Israel, and it's really neat that they're not even allowed to start a fire or anything, which includes turning on the stove or hitting an electronic button like to an elevator. So the hotel that we were in, I heard that they're all this way. On the Sabbath, on the Sabbath, if it had 10 floors, then the elevator would go to each floor and stop. It was on a mode, and it would stop at every floor all the way up and all the way down. So if you were making a trip from the 10th floor, it was going to be a trip getting all the way down because it stopped at every floor because they weren't allowed to hit buttons.
And
No, I don't know if they still abide by it or not, but I mean, I think we learned in, was it Thessalonians, that on the Sabbath, they're really only supposed to take so many steps in a day.
It's true. Yep. Very limited.
there's a term, but like I know some Jewish cultures, like they'll hire a Gentile to do certain things on the Sabbath.
Mm.
And it's a housemaid, like to cook, clean, to do the day-to-day work. That's in some like affluent Jewish cultures, like
Yeah, makes sense.
Keep a Gentile around and turn on the TV for you.
There you go.
cook dinner.
Yeah, that's interesting. One last note about 28. The next major calling card for the Pharisees from Jesus is a lesson about the Sabbath. Notice that Jesus isn't just claiming lordship of the Sabbath, but of everything. He says, Lord, he says he's Lord even of the Sabbath. He's Lord of everything, but he said even of the Sabbath. And just the way he words that is so irritating to them, you know. This is next calling card. I am God, I am the Lord, even of the Sabbath. So good stuff. Good stuff. Next week, Mark 3, we get into we get into the tipping point. When does it go from the Pharisees saying, all right, we're looking at this guy and he's starting to irritate us, to, all right, we got to kill him. We're about to get into a tipping point. So I'll leave you on the cliffhanger.